Hey everyone, it's NerfBoyProductions here, and today I want to start a new series. I know, on YouTube I'm not considered a Nerf modder, and I don't consider myself a Nerf modder. And I think one of the main reasons why I don't consider myself a Nerf modder is because I learned pretty much everything I know about Nerf from the internet. And I could never really find really detailed, in-depth mod guides, so I would always try and mod and just break it or get confused. So I want to start it. This is NBP's Easy Mods, and in this series we're never going to have a mod that is really difficult, or if it is, I'm going to go step by step. Nothing will be skipped, so this might be kind of a long video, but if you want to do simple mods to your blasters with no risk of breaking, you can follow this guide and you won't get lost. So today we're doing the Nerf Disruptor, but it's also worth noting that the Nerf Strongarm is pretty much identical, and internally they are the same, so you can do this to your Strongarm as well if you'd like. Now, I know for a lot of these guns, like the Disruptor and Strongarm, they sell orange ModWorks kits, which are like modded kits you can put inside, and that works amazingly, but orange ModWorks kits come with instructions, and they cost a lot of money. This mod we're gonna do is completely free. So yeah, if you want to pay for orange ModWorks kits, they have really good videos and stuff for you to follow along, and the installation's almost even easier because you're really just replacing parts. But in today's video, we are going to go over how to do the Air Restrictor Removal. So very simple, removing the Air Restrictor on a Disruptor. So let's turn it over, and here's what you're gonna need. You're gonna need maybe a long pair of scissors, or if you have long needle nose pliers, or like tin snips that are thin. And then your Nerf screwdriver, maybe some grease might help. And if you have one of those magnetic strips to like put screwdrivers on, those are great too, because we're gonna take out our screws and we're gonna go in a clockwise fashion. And I like to start at like a top corner. So we're gonna start here and we're just gonna work our way all the way around the gun. And when we take one out, we're gonna lay them in a line. So we're gonna lay them in a line so that we know how they go back in the exact same order. Now this particular blaster has a sliding rail, so we actually wanna undo the rail first. And let's face it, if you've seen my other mods where I've attempted paint jobs, people say it's sloppy. Trust me, I am taking my time with it. I am so bad at paint jobs, it's not even funny. So I don't think I have the qualifications to teach you guys how to do paint jobs. You might want to go somewhere else for that. I do know how, sort of. I just don't think it'd be right for me to be teaching you about paint jobs when there's some other much more qualified people to do so. So, like I said, we're gonna take off our slider rail first, and since we're not painting it, we can leave the screws right in the tray. And you might be able to do that with the whole blaster. You really only need to take the screws out if you're painting it. But one negative thing about leaving the screws in the blaster is if you accidentally bonk the shell and all the screws fall out, then you don't know which one goes where. So that's why it's kind of almost easier to just take them out and remember what order they go, which is why we're gonna unscrew them in a circle. And there's little ones underneath here in the slider. That's really important as well. Now, because this one has to be a really in-depth mod guide, I really don't want to speed up too much, but I feel like the worst part about modding is screwing the blaster apart and together. So, pretty simple. We're just gonna, there's nothing really to miss here. We're just going to go in a circle and unscrew all these. Alright, so the whole body should be unscrewed and done now. Now this is where I like to take a flathead screwdriver and kind of get it in between the shell and just move it around, because the shell should come apart loosely. If it doesn't, obviously a screw is still in there a bit. And it's kind of important that you get your shell to come apart really nice, because if you just pry it open and all of a sudden, bam, it snaps open, all your internals could fly everywhere. But once you manage to loosen it all around, we can take it off. And these are the internals. Normally I'd be all like, oh, take a picture. Luckily you have this, so you don't have to. Okay, so things to note. So this little guy right here is underneath that trigger. That's kind of important. There's actually a spring under there. So first thing, take this out, and then see that spring, we gotta get that out of there as well, because those things are going to fly out right away. Now, technically, it's not really something we have to remove, but you really want to. And then put that somewhere safe and put the spring with it so you know that's the spring for that piece. Other things to note. Okay, so see where the trigger is? It's kind of hard to tell because it's all orange, but this orange piece here is the whole trigger, And then there's this little guy, which is underneath it. It's important to note that it goes underneath the trigger. And this is actually all one unit, which is really great. This whole piece here. And then of course we have up front, take this off. And then we have our barrel. So our drum or whatever you want to call it. And that comes out. And it's also important to note that, see how it has a little ridge? That ridge goes on the inside of the blaster. So not like this on the outside, but it actually goes like inside that little blue notch right there. But yeah, you can take this out and we'll set it aside for now. And now we want to remove our whole kind of system, and it all comes out in one piece. Now nothing's screwed in, so it should just lift out and then out from underneath that trigger. And already all we have left in the shell is the trigger, and this is our whole assembly. So what we want to do is we want to get this orange barrel out from this whole white piece. See this little spring here? There's a spring on a pin. What you want to do is kind of twist this outwards, and the spring's going to launch away, so kind of got to be careful here. But as we start to twist, see how it's coming out? So I'm going to turn this around just so that I can do it a little easier. There we go. So yeah, there's this little notch with the spring, and then you just kind of pop it up like that, and the spring flies off. So you got to make sure you see where that went. I got it right here. And we are just going to slide out this orange tube. Now, this kind of trigger catch piece gets in the way, so you just kind of got to lift past it. Just bend it up a bit, and we can set this aside for now. And here's the money shot. See this little orange peg on a spring? That is the air restrictor, my friends. We want to get that out of there. So in here is the plunger. We can remove this and see how easily that slides in and out. Not good. And in a perfect world, if we were to cover off this hole, when we push this plunger through, it wouldn't be able to go through. But it really can. So now we just have this guy, and inside there, see how there's like a hole with 4 little prongs? We want to go in with tin snips or wire snips or whatever and just snip out those 4 pieces of plastic so that all the plastic ring like falls out, and then we can get the air restrictor out from there. So I'm going to use pliers, and we just kind of go in there and attack it. And this may take some time, so be patient. So I've cleared it out, as you can see now. It's just a chamber, and there's this little air restrictor which will simply fall out, and there was a spring behind it which kind of came out in the process, but that's it. Now you don't have to remove this foam, but there's no point in having that piece of plastic in there, so you can go in and just pull it out. And there we go. Now that's kind of cleared out a bit. We have a straight channel. Groovy. So air restrictor is removed. Now here's our plunger, and remember how that seal wasn't very good? We can add some silicone grease to this ring to make it a little bit nicer. And if you want to go the extra step, I'm not going to, but get a thin piece of Teflon tape, take off this O-ring and put it around, and then put the O-ring over the tape. It just it makes the seal a lot tighter and complete. I'm tight for time, but another thing you can do is see this little tiny pinhole, take some hot glue and just put it on a toothpick and clog that hole, because that is a little air release hole. When you clog that, you should have a really tight seal. So those are all things you can do to tighten your seal. I'm just gonna go ahead and do the grease. So I'm gonna put some grease on my finger. This is always fun. Take our plunger and then just kind of get it around there. Right, so now it's all greased up. You want to make sure that the spring is kind of clicked in, because there's these little notches and the spring clicks over top of it. So now it's on. This is ready to go back in the assembly. Ta-da! Good way to test how tight your seal is. If you've done the Teflon tape under the O-ring and also clog that little pinhole with glue or whatever you choose, then you should have a pretty tight seal. And if it's a perfect seal, you shouldn't be able to move this at all. But since this is an easy mod, we're just doing air restrictor removal, but those are things you can do. There's one more optional mod you can do, and it involves the little barrel here, little drum. So they have little dart posts here, and then it's less of a direct airflow because the air is hitting this plastic and just kind of going in between the sides. And I never like the dart posts. So you could just pull them out like this, just pinch and twist, and they'll come right out. Super simple, a lot easier than it was to do on the Maverick. The Maverick had the air restrictors built into this piece, so you actually had to remove 6 of them. They're doing it differently this time around. So there you go. You could clean that up if you want, but that's a much more direct airflow. So also it's bigger on this side than it is on this side, so the darts won't fall out if you're worried about that. There's the extra mod, and now it's time for the main event. the reassembly, because we all know that's the hardest part of everything. So let's start by getting our little cylinder here back into this white piece. So remember the tab with the spring. So just put it in whatever way you like. And just remember that the spring needs to go on this little tab and then pop up into the white piece. So here's our spring. I'm gonna pop that guy on there and then push it up like that. The spring is resting against that little white wall, and that is assembled. Also make sure that your plunger rod is underneath this orange piece here rather than like up above it like that. It needs to go underneath. So there's that assembly. Now there's some holes in the shell and little pegs in the white mount as well. So what you gotta do is remember to put this orange piece underneath the trigger. So kind of fit that under first, and then once that's underneath, line up the white peg in the hole, and they should just fit in really loosely. It shouldn't be a forced thing. And there we go, that's in. Another piece of advice I have for you is the plunger rod has a little peg facing downwards, and that's for the catch. So you wanna make sure that's facing down and not up. See the little catch right there? That needs to be going downwards. And that should be what it looks like. Now we can put the barrel back in, and remember what I said, how this piece needs to go inside. So put it into here first, press it down, take this piece, put it back on. And now the last and final part is kind of the trickiest, and it's this guy right here, this random piece of orange plastic. So this orange bar here needs to go outside the blue plastic and inside the white. You know what I mean? Like that. And it also needs to go underneath this orange piece. So kind of slide it under and then set it in like that. And this guy moves up and down like this. See that little hole in there? Right there? That's for getting the spring in. So remember this spring? It helps if you put it on like a thin screwdriver or something. If you put the spring into a screwdriver, then you can kind of work it a little better. But just basically push this orange piece all the way up and then put the spring upwards. Here, I gotta get my hand out of the way. Put the spring up into there, just sneak it in, and that should be it. Press this firmly down and just kind of move it up and down a couple times to make sure the spring's actuating properly and nothing's catching. We are good to go. And now we can put our shell back on, which should not be a fight. If it's a fight, chances are, if it's not going in nicely, this white piece here is out of line a bit. But it should, in theory, just drop in, no hassles. Now, if you have some screws in the ports, that might make it a little bit more difficult, but... So I just did something that I need to share with you guys, because it would be lying if I didn't. I had a problem with my spring, and the shell wasn't going on straight. Basically, my spring was like that. That's no good. You can't have your spring like that. There's a little plastic wall, and the spring needs to go behind it like that, so that everything can sit. And now everything should go back together nicely. No fuss, no muss. And if it is a fuss, you know you've done something wrong. There we go. Everything just like clicked together, boom, just like that. Let's screw it back together now. I'm really upset. I definitely should have been recording this, but what happened was I put it all together, and then I went to slide this back, and boom, the orange piece, it flung forwards, and basically this derailed. But what I did is when you let go, it goes to kind of there. Just give it a tap forwards, it'll lock over the piece, and now it's spring powered. You can cock it, load in a dart, and boom. And as you can hear, I'm gonna dry fire it. Hear the difference? Doesn't sound so nice. Normally, if you fire this blaster without any darts in it, because that air restrictor little pin thing has been pushed, it doesn't damage the gun. So make sure now that it's modded, you always fire with darts in. But that's that, it fires. Now, remember, this mod is cheap, this mod is free, and relatively fast. You're really just taking out a little spring-powered pin here, dart posts, and if you really want to make it better, go Teflon tape under the O-ring, extra lube on the O-ring, and plug the air release hole with hot glue. If you want to buy the Orange ModWorks kits, yeah, they are going to make your thing perform way better. I have an Orange ModWorks modded Strongarm right here, which again, it's the same gun. And it shoots like crazy hard. But that's also because This has a different spring inside. It has a bunch of aftermarket parts. This is just things you can do to your existing gun for free on the cheap. And hopefully it was an easy mod. Let me know, do you like this series? If you really don't, and you're like, dude, just stick to reviews, it's what you do, that's fine. But I thought I would try out the whole modding video, you know, high quality stuff. And I know this video is probably a little long as far as a mod video goes, but completely in depth, so you should have no worries about doing it yourself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, this was NerfBoyProductions, signing off.